There are three games that you can play when you're selling your expertise online, and each of those three games follows its own rules when it comes to sales and marketing, generally client acquisition. The main source of pain and confusion that people experience in this context are when they, number one, play in multiple games at the same time. Number two, when they don't know the rules of client acquisition in each of those games. And number three, when they are trying to apply the rules of one game on another game. So this video is for you if you're a B2B consultant, a coach, or you're trying to build a knowledge product. And this will help you understand what are the three games that you could be playing, the three different business models, and what are the rules for client acquisition in each and every one of them. And this was all triggered by a conversation I had recently with somebody who is trying to build her agency of sorts. And her main tactic, the thing that she was trying to do, is to grow on LinkedIn, to build an audience, to grow on LinkedIn and on Twitter at the same time. But LinkedIn was her primary platform. And she was really low on revenue. She was in quite a bit of anguish. But at the same time, her main focus was just to build an audience, make it really broad, like with inspirational topics and so on, just to build an audience. And to make matters worse, not only was she trying to build an agency, but she was also thinking of, once she has built this audience, she can sell a low ticket course product to them, which then could serve as an onboarding tool into her high-ticket consulting, high-ticket agency service. And so she was breaking multiple rules at the same time. So this is what I want to be discussing here so that you don't fall into the same trap. And one word of caution before we dive in, of course, there's tons of possible business models out there, but I'm going to be focusing on purely expertise-based businesses, something where you sell your knowledge either in a service format or as packaged course products, right? But we're not including things like e-commerce, dropshipping, anything that you can start where you sell physical products to people. That is not included. We're only looking at knowledge-based products. All right, so let's get into it. So what are the three games you can play and what are the sales and marketing rules in each of them? So business model one, this is the classic agency or consulting format. And of course, you can find countless examples out there. Any marketing agency, any consultancy fits this format. And there's so many of them also because it's the easiest way to build a business, to get a business off the ground. And it has many, many advantages. The first one is you are getting paid by people to actually improve at your craft, right? You are effectively starting out. When you're starting out an agency, you haven't had clients before, you don't know all that much. Yes, you know a little bit more than your client does, but as they pay you, you become better at your craft. Provided that you're an ethical player, you are focused on getting them results. And so if somebody's paying you to get them results, you will be taking more time out of your day to accomplish that result for them. And so you are getting better while the client is paying you. And that's why it's such a great model. Another advantage is that you can really get it started very, very quickly. Even if you don't have a huge amount of expertise, just if you put your head down and focus and study a field for 3, maybe 4 months, then you will have enough expertise to just get a couple of clients, maybe for free in the beginning or purely based on results payment. And that's great because you can get clients very, very quickly. And once you get somebody who hasn't paid you, but they can give you a testimonial and referral, that serves as proof that you know what you're doing and you can get your first paid client. So I would say that if you focus in your knowledge acquisition, you can actually get there very quickly. Within 3 or 4 months, you could actually have your first paying, maybe at a discount, but still paying client. And another great advantage of the agency or consulting model is that you don't need all that many clients. Provided that you do a good job with them and they are staying with you, all you need is to acquire 3 to 4 clients to have a reasonable monthly income. And finally, it's also comparatively easy to sell. Agency services are among the easiest sellable services out there, so you don't have to be very good. Plus, you don't need all that many. So it's a huge benefit. There's 2 big drawbacks with the agency model. Number one is that it's pretty capped because effectively you are selling your time. And unless you have an amazing, outstanding expertise where people are paying you $4,000 or $5,000 a day, then you will be pretty much limited to about $20,000 to $30,000 a month in terms of your income. And then also the other thing is that because you can only handle so many clients at the same time, it means that it will take time to rack up client testimonials. So all of that means that it's a very good model when you don't have a huge amount of cash reserves, but it's also the slowest scaling one. And so what are the best ways to get clients in this model? Unlike this woman that I spoke about in the beginning of the video, who was really truly focused on content, just trying to build an audience, you don't need to do that. This is really complex. And if instead she were to focus purely on outbound, where she has a very clear avatar, she knows what she's selling to them, and she is not afraid to get rejected, just start conversations with 100 people, you will get 1 client. If you do it professionally, if you do it well, just DM enough people, send them cold emails, whatever it is, but you can literally outbound your way to 3 to 4 clients within a month. And here's the math. If you really spend all day nothing but DMing people and responding to messages, you have one, maybe 2 LinkedIn accounts, and you do some cold emails, which are personalized, mildly personalized, not a huge amount. You can easily target 100 people a day. Out of those 100 people, you should get at least 5, maybe 10 to respond to you positively so that they want to get on a call, and you should be able to close one of them on a call. And if not, if it's going to take 200, well, then it takes 200. But just imagine if you just have a discipline where you do this, you do nothing but that all day, and you message 100 people, and even if it takes you 500, you can get yourself a client within a week. Okay, because you target 100 people a day, 5 days a week, you will get yourself one client, right? And so it's way more efficient to do it via outbound because you don't need all that many clients, as I said, and you don't need to do all that much content. Now, content has its place in this context, and that is, especially when you're on LinkedIn, when you're doing the DMing on LinkedIn, it makes a lot of sense to put out a little bit of content so that people can see that you know what you're talking about. Putting out some smart posts, really showing your expertise in that specific field is a good way to warm up the people before a call so that they can check you out, they see, knows what you're talking about, and let's get on a call. That can warm people up. Now, of course, there are people who have built a huge agency model purely based on inbound, purely based on the strength of their content. There's the famous example of Chris Walker, who built Refine Labs to, I believe, $20 million run rate exclusively on his LinkedIn content and his podcast and building a community. Now, that is the true exception. Only like very few people are able to do that. If you believe that you have that talent, then by all means, don't do outbound. Chris Walker, for example, strongly and emphatically rejects outbound. I just believe that this is a matter for a very select elite of people who are extremely good with content, very charismatic. Chris Walker is all of that, plus also good looking, which helps. And then all of that is a bit of a game, bit of a gamble that you would have to take. Whereas if you do just outbound, and if you have the stamina to withstand all the rejection that will come your way, you can get yourself a client, as I said, in a week. Whereas if you play the content game, you could be putting effort into content like this lady who I spoke to for months and months at a time without seeing a result. So content does make sense in the agency model, in the game number one, in the business model number one. But I would say focus 80% of your effort, if not 90%, on outbound, 10 to 20% on content, just as a source of, validating yourself, to making people at ease and warming them up before the call. But outbound should be the focus. Now, a very important caveat here, there are a couple of consulting offers that don't lend themselves to outbound. And I've spoke about this in another video. I'm going to link to it. It's called the critical density test. There are a few consulting offers that are so arcane, so unique that just doing outbound for them won't work really well. They are either very unique or they also require a huge amount of trust. And outbound is basically a stranger coming to you. You are not, in some contexts, very amenable to accepting that offer from a stranger. And you need referrals, or you need to kind of be familiar with them. In those cases, your best bet is to try to become niche famous. And only in this context does it make sense to actually write a book. I see so many consultants who are trying to write a book, or agency owners writing a book. And unless you really want to become niche famous and are playing the very long game, a book is mostly a vanity project. It will not get you clients. I've spoken to many, many people who are really, really broke. They're struggling financially, and they have written a book, sometimes to the point where somebody has written a book and produced 1,000 copies. They're sitting at home gathering dust. And that person does not get much traction with their business because they've put so much effort into writing a book, showcasing their expertise, while what they should have done is to just focus on getting clients and getting them great results. A book is a mechanism to get more people your way, to kind of get more attention, to have people come your way, but also it is a tool to increase your rates. If you're a published author, you can command arguably quite higher rates. But the thing is, it takes a lot of effort to get there, and you can achieve the same results simply by doing a good job. If you focus on client acquisition and getting your clients the optimal results, you will also be able to command higher rates because you have the credibility and you have the track records that people will want to pay you more because you get people results. So I strongly recommend against writing a book unless you already have strong amount of expertise, huge amount of proof. And I would say you should be worth at least $1 million before you start writing a book. Perfect example, Alex Hormozi only wrote his book after he was worth some 100 million. So those are the methods how to get clients in the agency or consulting context. Let's look now at game number 2, and that is high ticket coaching. This is effectively a productized version of the first model, right? So you start out with the first model, doing agency work that could be whatever, operations consulting, supply chain consulting, marketing consulting, and you just do that. You get results for people. And then after you've been doing this on a done for you basis, you then start teaching it. Usually what happens here is that you go from big clients who you've been doing this for. Now you go to slightly smaller clients who don't have the money to pay you to do it for them, and you teach them how to do it themselves. That's usually the best model. And it's sort of a productized version of the first one. And the great thing is you can command much higher rates because all you do is advise rather than implement. And this is exactly my story. I was doing done for you up until 2020, which is when I shifted full time to coaching. Now I've again gone back into doing a little bit of done for you because I see a lot of synergies. We've had people who go through the coaching program and then they want to continue working with us because we've been doing a good job on the coaching side. And now they have been so successful that they want somebody to manage their content, for example, for them. We now do that. I've developed quite a good model here, collaborating with a few people who want to build their agency so that later on they can also do coaching. But we now work as an agency where somebody else is fulfilling largely, and I'm just there on the calls and advising. But this is usually a great model to complement the coaching. But let's focus on the coaching itself. Now, the upside of coaching is, of course, as I said, higher rates, and you can effectively get unlimited clients, right? This has a very low cap. You can easily, just as a solo person with a couple of virtual assistants, you can get to $1 million in revenue without a hitch. The big downside of coaching is that it's considerably harder to sell than agency services. Plus, the customer lifetime value is generally much lower, right? An agency client pays us anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 a month, whereas a coaching client, in our case, pays us $7,500, right? And usually after that, the engagement is over. We currently don't have a product to upsell them. I'm working on it. I want to have one, it's like a mastermind where people will be charged 20, 30,000, but so far we don't have that. So therefore, lower customer lifetime value on the coaching side of things. And the third downside is that it generally takes a huge amount of work to build an even decent product, right? I have invested thousands and thousands of hours into building the Alpha Lead Academy, which is our coaching program. And that is all, it just contains everything from strategy modules to exactly how to book calls and how to do content and how to run a sales call, right? So there's just a huge amount of work. So you arguably would need to take a good half a year off and purely focus on that, or you just build it gradually as people come into the program. But that's a drawback, right? You have to build a huge bank of content so that your coaching program is really credible. So how do you win clients for the coaching model? Now, here content can become much more important. And if you're in the coaching game and you want to stay in it, you would be well advised to do a lot of content. It will not bring you a huge amount of clients initially. Also for coaching, it's very good to have some kind of an outbound practice. I would recommend starting with cold emails and cold DMs, maybe warm DMs as well. But that alone can get you to easily to $500,000 a year. Do build content, build a content presence at the same time. I would recommend a hub and spoke model where you create a YouTube video. This is exactly what I'm doing. I create one YouTube video a week at least. Based off that video, I create micro content for LinkedIn and I repurpose that video also for a podcast, right? And that's a model you can continue doing it. You can get helpers to manage the content for you. You can get somebody to write LinkedIn posts off the back of the video, and you can give people to edit the videos for you. It's relatively easy and it produces a huge amount of content because you can repurpose. So that content does make sense, but as you're starting out, I recommend that you only see it as a backstop. You have to invest a lot into it. I, for example, don't expect that my YouTube channel will get me clients in the next 12 months. If it does, brilliant. I've started the YouTube channel seriously only in maybe 1.5 or 2 months ago. So I have a long way to go. I don't expect anything from this. And I'm just producing content. That's just my main goal, that I produce as good the content is as I can do it. Now, very importantly, I don't do it extremely elaborately, right? I maybe spend 3 to 4 hours on one video. I'm not like Mr. Beast where I'm just investing a huge amount of money in the video itself, no high production value. It's truly about the expertise. I want people to effectively be listening to this. You don't need to watch me. If you do, hello, that's great. But you don't need to be watching this. It's fine if you just listen to this and you get some value out of it, right? Because I know that this over a long enough period will get enough people to follow me, to appreciate what I'm saying, to be inspired by and educated, maybe sometimes even entertained by this content, and they will then end up contacting me because they also need help in winning clients. Maybe they want me to help them to build these kind of content systems themselves. So content is important in the coaching model. However, I would not bank the majority of my expectations on it. It will become a great source of content, but let's say only half a year or a year from now, from when you start. Very important to know is that the really big money in the coaching context is not made via content, right? And that is, we have sometimes these people who are very familiar to us, like Shay Rowbottom or Leah Turner on LinkedIn. They have huge followings, I think some 700 and 200,000 respectively. But I just know for a fact that they're not making all that much money, right? They're doing great. I think in Shay Rowbottom's case, she makes anywhere between $1 million and $2 million a year. Leah Turner shared her stats, I think a year ago or so, and she was at 300,000 at the time. So it's absolutely great and respectable income, but it's not where the big bucks are made. Content is great, but it makes you the really big bucks if you have achieved something truly remarkable beforehand. So like that's why Alex Hormozi has millions of views on his content, because he has achieved something very remarkable, got $100 million net worth by the age of 30 or something like that. And then he talks about that. This is why he gets so much traction, because he's extremely credible. If you are effectively just growing your content, if you're just growing your business and documenting as you go, the content will not be hugely successful, nor will it bring the huge amount of revenue. I firmly expect that right now we're at 400,000 a year approximately in revenue. Half of that comes from outbound, half of that comes from inbound and referrals. I expect that this ratio will maintain itself as we grow, and that content itself will never be more than $500,000 in revenue. I believe once we hit $1 million in revenue, I want to start doing ads. I want the story that I got to $1 million revenue only with organic methods. It's kind of part of the narrative that I want to pursue. You can get to $1 million a year in revenue using purely organic methods. And beyond that, I will start using ads, right? And this is where the big bucks get made, using ads. Buy the traffic, get it to a landing page, convert people there, and then sell to them. You can, of course, use people who sell on your behalf, and you can have somebody manage the ad spend for you, but initially you should be doing it yourself. So this is the way how to get clients in the high ticket coaching model. You start out with outbound, you supplement it with content, not expecting much from the content. You take content more seriously than you do in model one, in the agency model. Why? Because you can get unlimited, almost unlimited clients via coaching. You in an agency model don't really want, or you cannot have 30 clients at the same time. It would be way too complicated, and you would need to hire people to deliver. It gets all messy. I would strongly recommend against that. The most you can reasonably have is 10 clients as a solopreneur. And for that, you don't need a huge amount of content. So their content purely for validation and for just showcasing your expertise. In coaching, the content becomes more important. So I would definitely invest in it, become better at it, while starting with outbound, supplement with content and take content really seriously. And once you hit $1 million in run rate, really do ads. And this is how you can then scale to 10 million and beyond. However, also you can stay at around $1 million a year if you just do content. And I think that is a really nice place to be. This is ultimately what I aim to do. I will use ads just to get to kind of like a 2-3 million run rate. But I believe that then I will ease off again, because I don't want to be spending too much time on ads. I read a great article from Ryan Holiday recently where he said he just stopped doing completely any kind of advertising, any pushing of his product, and instead he focuses purely on creating good content. And the huge benefit of this is you become smarter. You become so much better. You become articulate when you do videos, when you think something through. It's almost like you're writing a book, but you're writing it in episodes. And that is very rewarding. I love doing content, and I hope this, is transported through the video. And you are becoming better as a human when you are creating content. So ultimately, that's where I want to get to. Ads, definitely try it out, see how far we can get it. But at some point, then ease off and purely focus on content, because then I will also have a much better story to tell. Imagine if with ads, I get to $5 million, $10 million run rate, then I can go easing off. And my content will then have the chance to actually, ironically, get me back to 5 million purely based on content, because I then have a good story to share. Similar to Alex Ramosi, not as big, of course, but similar to him, I will have a better story to share. And that gets us to model number 3, to game number 3, build a big audience and sell low-ticket knowledge-based products to them. And that is a completely different model, and it really follows very different rules from the ones before. So I would recommend that you start out, if you are really at, basically at zero, you don't have a huge amount of cash reserves, start with the agency model. As soon as you have the credibility, transition into coaching, into high-ticket coaching. That'll get you to maybe $500,000, $1 million a year. And there, at that point, you can then decide if you want to transition into something that is more like you just create and people buy whenever they want to. You don't need to push them. It just happens. And this is the case, for example, with somebody like Justin Welsh or Dickie Bush or Dan Coe. These people have built considerable audiences on Twitter and on LinkedIn, maybe even Facebook. And they have like $100, $150, $200 product that they then sell off the back of it. Now, in the case of Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole, their Ship 30 product, I believe, is now it's $1,200. So that's a little bit on the higher low ticket side. But generally, that is the path to follow, right? So you want to build a big audience. And for that, you just need to do something completely different than what you were doing in games 1 and 2. And that is truly to build a big audience. And that is what the lady that I spoke about in the beginning of the video, that is what she was doing. She was applying the rule of game 3 to game 1. And not only is that inefficient, because you don't need to do that, it also means that she was a little bit out of touch, because she was trying to get a broad audience, but a broad audience does not really respond to high ticket products. Right? That's a generalization. I'm sure you can find an exception to that. But for high ticket products, it's much better to show niche expertise, which will naturally only appeal to people who are in need of such niche expertise. And that's simply quantitatively way fewer people than the more kind of aspirational content that a Justin Welsh is posting. Justin Welsh is posting, let's say, against 9 to 5, against companies draining you and you getting burned out by an exhausting job. That is what this kind of content is about. And that is extremely broadly applicable. And then you get an audience of people who are very aspirational, and charging them $150 is fairly easy. It would be much more difficult to sell a 5K coaching product to somebody who's responding to a tweet about how the 9 to 5 is burning you out. Okay, so that's why these 3 different games have very different client acquisition rules. And I strongly recommend that you always are aware of which game are you trying to play. What is the long-term plan? For example, in my case, I want to get the coaching business mainly to like 800,000 revenue. The agency can stay at 100, 200, so that it provides a nice feeder. It provides from the coaching into agency, which then gets delivered by other people. And then in the very long run, I also want to build products and kind of basically only be broadcasting and doing content, and then just simply collecting money from low ticket products. But that's a long way off. I see myself, at least for the foreseeable 3 to 5 years, to build a multi-million-dollar business with the coaching alone. And for that, I'm following those rules. I'm following the rules of, I don't want to go too broad in my content. I want to show niche expertise. And I will then, based on that, have a really good conversion funnel. And outbound will always remain a part of my sales mix. I will be continuously doing DMs, cold emails, and ads, as I said. But those are the methods to apply in the coaching model. So be aware which place you are in, which game you're playing, what are the rules, and don't try to apply the rules of one game on another. It just doesn't make sense. It's not helpful, and I strongly recommend that you don't do it. Cool. I hope this was useful. My name is Michael Bohannes. We help consultants, agency owners to build client acquisition systems so that you can stop being dependent on referrals. If this is interesting, I left the link in the description or in the show notes. If you're listening to this on podcast, it's in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, it is in the description. Click the link. Maybe we can help you. If not, no problem at all. I hope you're getting value from these videos. I definitely enjoy making them, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.